Anton, you know him from his legendary work as Pontius Pilot in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Munkustrap in Jesus Christ Superstar, Augustine Magaldi in Cats, and Pharoah in Evita. The one and only Anton Luitingh.
That's funny.
Yeah, I know,
That's
right?
funny.
Anton is an actor, singer, and a good resident director. You've seen him in more productions than you'll ever imagine. The co-founder of LAMTA and my personal mentor. Welcome, Anton.
Oh, that's very sweet.
I know.
It's lovely to be here, especially with you sitting there.
Oh, thanks, Ant. Right, let's just start right in the beginning. How and where did your love for the world of theatre begin?
It's a good question. I think the answer is to start with when I was a toddler, and I there's a thing called a piano, and when I was a young kid, I think I found myself sitting there just bashing notes as little toddlers do, and not making sense of anything, but it seemed to have a massive impact on me because, as my mother said, I would be in the bath and playing on the side of the bath like I was, concert pianist. So I think as a kid, music and the love of music, and particularly this instrument called the piano, had a massive impact on me. And as a result, a lot of what I do as a musician, I do by ear, because I never really officially studied music, but it's something that was always inherent in me, and actually led to my decision to study acting and drama instead of going to study music. And there was a moment in my career where I reached this crossroads after high school, and I was like, am I going to do music? Am I going to do drama? And so I thought, well, I play music by ear. I'm inherently musical.
Yeah.
Let me go the other route and then combine the two together. And that's hence my love for musical theatre, and I guess why I was in so many musicals. So yeah, it kind of started there. But also, in school, you have the opportunity to do choirs and to write compositions. And we had this amazing thing at school called cabaret in the quad. And I think for about 5 years, I was very involved in that. As a youngster, composing my own thing. So it was always there. It was always there.
Okay, cool. And when did you start drama? Did you do drama in high school as well?
Interesting. I was actually studied Latin till matric because I was going to be an attorney like my dad. And it kind of brings me back to this whole idea of mentors and how, the right people in your life can steer you in a way that takes you to a completely different place that you never knew you would go, and actually find the truth of who you are and say, look, you're not an attorney. You are a musical theatre performer. And
that must have been devastating to hear.
Oh, no. You don't want to be my dad when I told him that. But it was very interesting. So really in high school, I had a mentor who, my drama teacher, who was ironically also my Latin teacher. And he had this incredible way of turning this dead language into something theatrical. And I think that marriage of, seeing what he could do in the classroom, and many, many years later doing LAMTA is it's just profound for me how the influences in your life end up taking you to the place you end up being. And there were a few mentors, which I'll talk about later, that also steered me in that direction. So, it's not so much that I kind of went, I'm studying drama. It was just that I found myself in a number of productions that ended up getting me really excited about this idea of theatre. So that by the time I'd finished matric and got all my results, I was like, guys, I'm going to study theatre. And that's where it all began.
So then you went to Stellenbosch?
Yes. So Stellenbosch was where I found my next mentor, and kind of, he was a man called Blaise Koch. And Blaise, along with a number of other lecturers, really kind of steered me in a certain direction in terms of the kind of theatre that I like to do, the kind of, when I write shows, the sort of things that I want audiences to see and experience. But Stellenbosch was really interesting. I got into the 4-year course at that time. It was a B-Dram. And a lot of the work we did was in Afrikaans. And I kind of went to Stellenbosch because I had grown up in the southern suburbs in Rondebosch, and UCT was the obvious choice. But I was like, no, I want to go somewhere away from home, somewhere that challenged me. I love the idea of studying bilingually because I think I absolutely love Afrikaans theatre. I think there's something about that language that really excites me. And then, so I came out of there sort of well, in terms of theatre, bilingual. I mean, my Afrikaans is, it's okay. People will understand me, but I'll have to go away and really praat die taal to make it sound like I really know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Or sound like I know what I'm saying, at least. But Stellenbosch was a really, really exciting place for me to really dive into the idea of also writing your own stuff. And you know, at the end of the day, for me, it's a combination of being really, really opportunistic in terms of grabbing the bull by the horns and saying, if nobody's going to call me, I'm going to make my own work, combined with the combination of always being prepared when an opportunity comes. And many opportunities have then followed. Many opportunities came where I was prepared because I knew they would come at some stage. And, you know, and then if I look back at how it all started for me professionally, it started with me taking my own work and saying, hi, Mr. Producer, or hello, you know, Grahamstown Festival or whatever. This is me. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like, you know, a lot of actors and performers just sit back and wait for the telephone to ring. And we're not in that business anymore, unfortunately, or ever really have been. But yeah, it taught me a hell of a lot. I think, as I said to you earlier, the idea of studying acting as somebody who loved music and composed and wrote songs and cabarets and stuff was a really, really good move. Yeah. And even though Stellenbosch wasn't driving me in the direction of singing or musical theatre in a sense, it taught me some really wonderful things about acting and performing and theatre that, I mean, I would do it again over and over. Yeah. But the industry's changed, the profession's changed. Since then, a lot has changed. So, but I look back at it fondly.
Amazing. So, from Stellenbosch, then you became Munkustrap in Cats. But what did you do in between your days and your big break? What did that look like?
Well, yeah, I think you know, the thing about writing your own work has always been a big thing for me. So, after school, with a few mates, I wrote a show called Mercury, which was the music of Queen and Freddie Mercury, and it was an a cappella show with 3 of my best friends and a girl that we found with a beautiful voice. And you know, me, big thinker, big dreamer, went to the Dock Road Theatre then, which used to be at the waterfront. And I said to the guy there, look, we've got a Queen show. We'd love to put it on. Do you have a space for us? And we kind of hired the theatre. And that was when I met a man called David Kramer, who was working a lot there with all his shows. And David was like, oh, wow, you guys are, you know, you're pretty ambitious. But I love this about you. And so let me find you the best sound engineer, the person who's going to make this really, really cook, found us a lighting designer, and really helped us move forward. And that was really after school. I mean, we were green, but the show worked beautifully. I mean, everyone loves the music of Queen. We don't have to go down that road. You know, so we really couldn't go wrong.
Yeah.
And that was before I started studying at Stellenbosch. And again, you know, it kind of seems completely impossible that, you know, 4 best friends from school can just leave and go and perform professionally somewhere. But again, anything is possible. And then the same thing happened after university with a bunch of my friends in the degree that I studied. There were only 6 of us. We started writing cabaret shows. And this was where my mentor, Blaise Koch, came into it, because we kind of started a production company together. I also had a friend called Keith Bain, who is a fantastic journalist. And he and I wrote a number of original musicals. One was called Chain Popping, which at that stage was about, you know, the whole dance scene and the whole, you know, popping pills and, you know, it was kind of like train spotting to music. And we took that to the Grahamstown Festival. We wrote a thing called the Z Files, which was a parody on the X Files. So we had a lot of fun when I was at university, just writing and creating shows and getting into my little yellow, you know, Volkswagen, and, you know, with all the set in and chugging up to Grahamstown, and, you know, taking risks and, you know, sometimes scoring, sometimes making no money. Sometimes, you know, I did a lot of performance at that time because for some reason at that stage when I was studying, it was okay to go and perform professionally. But as you know, it's not when you're at LAMTA.
Well, you just don't have time in a LAMTA
Yes,
day
you don't
to do
have a
it. I feel
second.
like we could if we had
No, you
hour
could.
free.
You could, but you would all be dead, lying in classes in the morning on the floor. But literally, I remember, again, in my yellow Fola, driving from, again, the Dock Road Theatre was where I then, a few years later, was performing Mike McCulloch 60-something and 50-something, and there were shows where, I would go and sing at night, get into my yellow Fola, stay at home, get into my yellow Fola early in the morning, drive through to Stellenbosch, do my classes, come back to the waterfront at night, perform. And, it was amazing because, my parents were like, oh, this drama thing, are you going to make money? And in a very short space of time, I sort of paid for my fees. I had bought myself a car. I'd bought myself a keyboard. And so they were like, okay, well, actually, this might work. Maybe he will actually earn money. So it was really, really an exciting time because I was already dipping my toe in the profession. But what I loved about this production company that I started with Blaze was that it was where the real me started to kind of be able to do what I wanted to do in the format of cabaret. And that's where we started writing shows and putting them on at what was then on Broadway, which was the old on Broadway that Russell Shapiro owned in Greenpoint. And it was the go-to place for productions and dinner theatre. And the Blaze had always taught me this concept, which you guys know because I kind of tell you about this, of tickling with a blade. And writing theatre that was simultaneously very funny, but also hard-hitting and kind of edgy and making people uncomfortable. I mean, I remember there was one show we did where we literally stuck dildos on the wall. And, and literally, like, part of the scene would be to choreograph something and, move past the dildo and then slap it, and bouncing. And no, it was completely like, tables walking out. And
do you have these on tape?
I don't actually know that we do, but I have photos.
Okay.
I have photos.
Okay, we need to see these.
No, you do. But it was really kind of, and again, we were young performers. We were experimental. We were doing things that were really out there. And Blaze was very supportive of this. I mean, the reviews were often like, what the hell is going on? But in a sense, it kind of prepared me for what I would do in future in terms of parody and pushing boundaries, and I think what I love about the current show that LAMTA's doing is, we're not, Dwayne and I always said, our first musical is going to make an impact. It's not only in the way that it's presented, but in terms of the content, it would be so easy to put on a Grease with a bunch of students and go, look, let's do a feel good thing. But it's really important for me, and I love this about theatre, is that people need to leave thinking, they need to leave having felt something, then whether it's good or bad, or, I mean, there are moments in the show where people are triggered by things and they, you see them leaving for 5 minutes and they come back in afterwards. And, not that I want people to feel triggered, but theatre is there to make a statement about the world around us. And anyway, and I think the idea of cabaret and writing shows that do that was really, really exciting to me.
Yeah.
So in between my end of university and the start of my professional career in Cats, that was one of the things that happened. But I think the biggest thing that happened was that I wrote a show called Womanize, which was, again, a whole bunch of girls that I'd studied with at Stellenbosch. And the idea of the show was that in the first half of the show, they impersonated male rock stars, but like literally like Michael Jackson with the moves, looking like them, dressing like them. And then the second half was them in these beautiful, female outfits, still singing male songs, but with their interpretation. And I boldly decided, I'm going to go to the Theatre on the Bay and talk to a man called Peter Turin and say, please, can I put my show on in your theatre? Which I did, and he laughed uproariously and said, well, I tell you what, why don't you go upstairs and perform the show there in our cabaret bar, which is now Studio 1 of LAMTA.
Aww.
Yeah, that's a full circle story of note.
Yeah.
But, we performed the show, and one evening I saw this man standing at the door watching the show. And the next morning I was called to his office, and he said, very nice show, but what are you doing hiding in the corner behind the piano? You must come out front. So, so it was really, really cool because that was definitely the start of big things for me. And I think the lesson of that for any youngster is, what are you waiting for? Go to the Dark Road Theatre and say, can I put my show on here? Write something, take it to the Graham Sound Festival. Approach a producer, no matter how scary it might seem, and say, this is my work. Because what else? What are you going to do? You're gonna wait forever. So you need to be opportunistic, and you need to say, like, in the nicest way, because nobody likes people that aren't nice in this business. And that's a lesson that everyone's learning very, very quickly, I hope. So from there on, I did a farce. My first sort of professional work was with Alan Committee. The two of us did a farce for Rex Garner with Suanne Brown, which was really eye-opening for me because, Rex Garner was one of the biggest stars of theatre in this country. Yeah. And, to be sort of, again, mentored by him whilst being mentored by Peter, having been mentored by Blaze and having been mentored by my high school, it's all about mentors. And at the end of the day, I think people they underestimate the importance of people in your life who steer you in a direction that really end up taking you where you're meant to be. So hot off the heels of Bedside Manners, which was the farce, was the audition for Cats. And that's where my life changed. Like, it's the last show on the planet I would have seen myself doing. Yeah. Because, I'm not much of a dancer.
Oh, Anton, you're great.
But, I managed to fake it enough with my acting skills, with my improv skills, with my singing voice to go, look, this person's worth having in the cast. We will drill him for 8 weeks and get him to do what he needs to do in order to be good enough for Cats. And then it just steamrolled, like literally from day one of Cats, the blinkers came off, and then you sort of go, okay, this is the real world. Because I think in studies, you're still in a cocoon, you're still protected. But when you're out of it, it's when you sort of the real world opens up to you. And I think the opportunity to travel abroad and go to, tour internationally to the most incredible places, but with international casts of, West End performers and Australians and you go, okay, cool, this is the business. This is how it rolls. Yeah. And that's how you learn. You never stop learning as a professional.
Yeah. So then how long did you do Cats for?
Gosh, about 4 years on and off. I think the exciting thing about that was that, people are like, how do you do a show like that for 4 years and stay fresh? And I think, my thing is always to act as, go back to the story, go back to the script. If ever you feel like you're losing your way, go back to the source material. And as much as people laugh about Cats being this banal, like what on earth is going on, dressed up as a cat, meow sort of thing, I'm sort of like, I'm like, no, it's extremely philosophical piece. Yeah. And we had a director who just steered us in the most incredible way to understand why this piece is why it's been around for so long. Yeah. And that within each of these cats that people see, pouncing around on stage is a human equivalent who has a really important story to tell. That's why I say go back to that and you will always know what it is that you're trying to achieve at night on stage. But what also helped was the fact that we were presenting this to different audiences in different cultures, learning a little bit about, China, learning a little bit about New Zealanders, and just every time you got on stage, it was a fresh opportunity to rediscover the show through the eyes of an audience who are different from who you've just performed for previously. Okay. And I mean, like how ridiculous walking, on the Great Wall of China in the morning and at night performing Cats. I mean, as a young person in the industry, you kind of go like, is this a dream? Is this real? I'm being paid to stay in amazing hotels, flown around wherever I want. I don't have to touch my per diem because, we're being looked after so well, saving your money at home and seeing parts of the world that were just like mind-blowing. So it really was a time of, it was a dream come true.
Yeah. I think also like performing the same show for so long, but you're getting culturally richer every single day, just being all over the world.
Absolutely.
Like you change as a person, which obviously like.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that people always say, oh, that person's well-traveled, in referring to the fact that they're so knowledgeable and they're so, open to new ideas and seeing things that have changed their perception of stuff.
Yeah.
And that really did do that. And I think there was this kind of mecca of musicals where you sort of understood that this touring formula was now something that for a good 10 or 15 years was taking South African talent overseas. And not only was it great for the performers because they were developing, as you were saying, this worldly knowledge of how this industry works, but also for the producers going, gosh, we've got these incredible talented South Africans. They are hard workers. They are nice people to tour, and we're paying them in rands. Like, what wouldn't, what win.
Yeah.
So it was a really wonderful time, and then COVID happened. But I kind of feel like the upside of COVID is the fact that for now, at least, we are having to create our own shows, allowing our own designers, our own directors, our own lighting designers, sound designers to actually now recreate shows from their perspective.
Yeah.
As opposed to before, this is the blueprint, this is how you do it, this is where you stand, this is how you play the character.
Yeah, we've had to inject a lot more into our country to rebuild it after everything. But
Yeah.
it's I think it's been very exciting to see.
Very
Like,
exciting.
even Spring Awakening as an example, we've never had a musical like that before.
Quite right.
But we had to,
Yeah,
it's a rebirth.
absolutely.
Right. What has been your best moment in your career and subsequently your worst?
Oh gosh, the best moment in my career, I would say, again, we had this incredible Scandinavian tour of Cats. And I've never experienced a white Christmas before. And, as South Africans, Christmas is, shorts and braais and, maybe an attempt to pull out a turkey, which you don't really want to eat in this heat wave, So, and you kind of, you're brought up knowing that Christmas is all about snow and, there's the beauty of a sort of European Christmas. And so this is what happened. We had this wonderful tour of Cats in Scandinavia over Christmas, and it was a tour that was kind of almost felt like I was a rock star, in that we were in these big stadiums where you had like 30,000 people watching you. Jeez. And you had these kind of rock star Madonna mics on so that everyone could hear you, and these massive screens on either side. So it was kind of like a tour of Scandinavia but visiting all the stadiums. Okay. So I imagined it would be like a rock star would arrive at a stadium, have thousands of people watching you. You're going through these back hallways which are like a stadium now, and you treated like a rock god. Yeah. And you would come out afterwards and there would just be queues and queues of people who would want to sign you autographs and things like that. But it was the magic of everything coming together, where you were like, again, is this real? Is this real? It's like, it's beautiful. It's Christmas. So wherever you went, it was just like lights and Christmas trees and snow. And then you would be walking into these arenas of like 30, 50,000 people who were there to see you. You're standing in the front of the stage as Munkustrap, doing your, Jellicle Cats come out, your faces on these big screens, and you're looking at people kind of with these glow sticks. I mean, it was just, this is kind of stuff that doesn't happen, and you look back at that and go, that's one of the memories that you will always see the pun that you will always hold on to. An absolutely beautiful moment. I think one of my worst would probably be when I was cast as the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, and then found out I had to have my tonsils out the week before we started rehearsals. So I spent the first 3 weeks of rehearsals like shoving Voltaren capsules in places I never thought I would ever have to.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
Yes, and I mean, and being in like serious pain, but having to recreate this animal. And I think maybe some of that came from the pain, some of that inner tortured demon that the Beast has. And it just wasn't a pleasant time. And also the pressure of creating a character that you've only really seen on film and in animated movies, and then trying to find a way in which you kind of humanize this and with a cast around you who had sort of expectations of how is this actor going to do this, and the pressure, having done some really wonderful roles leading up to the Beast, of going, okay, now I have to pull this out the bag, and I think that it's that old thing about, as the higher you climb on the ladder, the further you have to fall if you mess up. So the experience was absolutely wonderful, but there was that first 3 weeks where I was just like, gosh, what am I doing? You know, the anxiety of, is my voice going to be okay by the time I need to sing it? And I think that at that stage, in order to get me to where I needed to be, I had my tonsils out, but was in hospital for a few days after that. And they're injecting you with cortisone, which, like, certainly for me, the more cortisone that's in my body, I'm like a nervous wreck. It makes me very anxious. So to be that anxious before starting a rehearsal process of something you're already anxious about, it wasn't the greatest thing for me.
Yeah.
So that's the highs and the lows, certainly. I mean, I can tell you funny stories about running into walls on stage and things like that. But, in terms of like the best moment and the worst moment, those two shine as...
I remember because I had my tonsils out in second year and I was in bed for 10 days. I couldn't speak. I didn't eat for 6 days until I went to the doctor to give me something, and I ate a piece of bread, and then it wore off and I was like, well, that's it.
Yes.
I was so skinny.
It's horrible.
But, but I was like, and the whole time I was lying there like in pain, I just remember you like, how did you start singing and rehearsing?
No, it was...
Also like one of the biggest roles in your career right after, like, it's worse than childbirth, apparently.
No, it's horrendous. It really, really is, because I mean, we don't, even anybody that's had like a sore throat or like strep throat or whatever, it's like the worst. It's like, because we swallow all the time.
Like
We're
all the
like,
time.
this is, you take it for granted
And, like,
until you like actually, you can't get stuff down, and then it affects your energy and it's terrible. But
do you think that experience is why you're so hard on people when they're sick? Like, I'm just making the connection.
No, look.
But do you think like that's where the martyr in you came from?
Look, I'm very old school, and I think one of the reasons I really believe our students are so good is because there are old school values that I feel like cannot be compromised. And as much as we are in the new world and a new age and a new approach to stuff, there is tradition and there are ways of doing things that I feel like need to be maintained. And one of them is, and I know this because I've seen it, I've been around the block as a resident director, the pressure on a company to remain intact for as long as possible is so important. And even though you have an infrastructure underneath and you carefully put them in place, a show starts to crumble at the edges the more you start to lose people who are cast in their specific roles, including the supporting cast. I mean, it's that pyramid of the swings are there to jump into the ensemble roles, and the ensemble are there to jump into the principal roles. But as soon as you start to do that, and the more you start to do that, regardless of talent, the piece starts to shake a little bit. And, and I've seen people, Amra Faye in Chicago, perfect example, comes on stage, she's sick as a dog, running into the wings to vomit in buckets in between scenes, comes on an absolute professional. You wouldn't think anything is wrong with her. I'm sitting there watching her from the front going, gosh, she's incredible. And then I'm going, oh, by the way, on my phone, Amra is sick as a dog. I'm like, what? It doesn't look like it. And just, it's that fine line between, look, you really, really do need to go off. And how hard, like seriously, come out.
No, but it's amazing. You've made us also resilient as your students. Like, I've gotten through so much, even my first year out of college, because I'm like, how sick am I really?
How sick am I really? Yeah, can I do this?
Can I do this?
They're always to a doctor stage or whatever they call it, and I think there is a thing about going on stage and putting yourself into that character and into that world, and your body just plays along, and you just go, and then you get off stage and you just go, whoa, but it's really, really important, I think, for people to understand, performers to understand that they have so much more in them. And so at LAMTA, I'm probably a little too hardcore, actually. And I mean, I've been known to tell people, you're going on, and then they vomit on stage. I've been known to have that happen. But to be fair, I think
for you.
to be fair, at the end of the day, I think people have also turned around and gone, oh my word, I'm stronger for it.
Yeah.
And the reality is that in our business, you have to show up. You have to show up. I've known conductors who have not had understudies, literally, again, with a bucket next to them, and all you see is a hand in the screen kind of giving you an idea of when you're supposed to start because their head is in the bucket next to you.
Yeah.
And you go, well, that's our profession, You've got to be there, you've got to show up. So I'm a stickler for punctuality, getting there on time, making sure that you stick to the rules of theatre. Do not get into a lift at interval, because I have been stuck in a lift before and I need to be on stage in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's the worst feeling in the world. So again, it's not that I'm trying to be old fashioned, but there are just things that in the theatre need to happen.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's Anton the Creative. Thank you, Anton. It was so awesome to hear about, especially your days in between Stellies and Cats, because that's like an unknown to us completely.
Yeah.
It was very cool to hear you putting dildos on walls and stuff. Anyways,
not going to hear about that.
Yeah,
so.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyways, come back next week to hear about more about Anton the Professional. Peace out. Bye. We must think of a thing. Okay. And
See.
scene. Yeah.